Rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we are back in production at the Loft Space studios, and I'm kind of lucky to have Olga next to me. This lady is not only very good looking, but she's also a scientist, which is primarily what she does with her life. And compared to many other scientists who are like my father or me, and Olga deals with creativity. Here at Space, the Google calls us creative people, creators, right? So Olga actually a scientist that deal with those questions, and this is her book. So let's hear what do you do, how the creative part comes to your profession.
Okay, so first of all, hello Alex and hello everyone, and thank you very much for having me here. It's such a great pleasure to be your guest. Well, creativity is a very interesting trend. Some people still believe that creativity has to do with drawing, painting, music, and so on. But as a matter of fact, creativity has to do with everything. It has to do with the way we think. It has to do with the way we perceive this world, with the way we wake up and we make choices, we proceed with our day, we make decisions, and so on. So creativity is very broad in scope, and it has to do with something novel and valuable.
But in my particular case, for example, it's difficult. I do photography, I do video, I'm in front of the camera, I'm behind the camera, I do a variety of, like I roll the cables, sometimes it's sound, sometimes it's visual. People say, oh, how can you be creative in every aspect? But if you run the YouTube channel, for example, like me, you have to be in so many different roles. You have to be a writer, you have to write your scripts, you have to plan, be a director in some ways, and you have to be also a talent if you have nobody else to film. You have to, be behind the camera. So it's really helpful to know the makeup and the hair styling, and how to have your guests. How that helps the creativity.
Well, as a matter of fact, you are very creative, and if you are creative in every aspect of life, in any area, because that's the way how your brain functions. You can take some valuable information and you can bring it from one sphere to another, and you can move it around. You can combine very distant things.
A lot of people saying it's not being professional. You're not doing one thing perfectly. You're not the best photographer, you're not the best videographer. You do so many roles that you do not excel in each one of them. I think I'm pretty good in many of those things, but I truly understand the argument of being professional in one expertise and nothing. Like, I'm just wedding photographer, but I don't do portraits, or I do portraits but I don't do parties. And in my case, it's so many different things.
Yeah,
is it great?
And I understand. It's a narrow vision to think if you are creative and professional, you can be creative and professional only in one area. And there are so many great, I would say, the most creative minds of different centuries that actually proved it right.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about Leonardo da Vinci, we're talking about Albert Einstein.
I'm not in that league yet, so I cannot compare myself that far. So just because they
just as an example, people, when they are creative, when they are able to connect distance, thoughts, and tools and bring it from one area to another, that's how they think, that's how they perceive, that's how they combine. So the way of combining those unusual combinations, and you can do it literally in multiple spheres. And actually, if you are tasking and you think of different things, you have knowledge from different areas, it becomes even easier for you to combine those things.
Is it similar to the language? My son speaks Russian and English, and we try. My brother's son speaks also Chinese and a little bit of French and Italian. So, and he's we're talking about 4 or 5-year-old kid. So I think the exposing a kid at that early age to so many different languages might build the creativity and help
Absolutely.
the brain function in different
Actually,
ways.
it's interesting that you brought it up because people that are multilingual, they're more creative because you boost your mind. You make your mind switch from, one form of metaphors or language or structure to another. And as a matter of fact, many studies show that people that travel a lot and also immigrants, people that, move to a different country, they have to adjust to so many new things. Their minds start working more intense.
So we
And-
should immigrate again somewhere once in a while, so just to stay on top and be sharp. It's not enough just to have short of immigration once, but keep doing this. Okay, interesting.
Every time you make your mind work differently or think differently, or every time you expose to a different environment, different
So
people.
challenge help, I understand.
Absolutely.
But what about the putting yourself on edge and putting yourself on the discomfort position?
Okay.
On some point, it may be helpful, but always be in discomfort is not the best way to.
I agree.
And on the other side, I think if you always comfortable and you just do what you know, you never learn.
So we
What's the
can
balance?
take your lead and go to this area of what doesn't kill you make you stronger, which is true in a way. However, sometimes it's dangerous. Being uncomfortable a lot of times and most of the time can be very dangerous also for human well-being, for human mind and everything. However, when you find yourself or finding yourself in a challenging situation, again, you boost your mind to think differently. You go different directions, sometimes too many different directions, and you come up with this new original ideas because creativity is pretty much based on your flexibility, fluency, originality, elaboration, and postponed judgment. So every time when you find yourself in this uncomfortable situation, so you have this perfect environment to develop all of those characteristics.
Last month, we lost two creative minds to suicide. The lady with her fashion company and the Anthony Berderes both took their life. These people had billions. Well, Anthony was kind of poor, but he had fame, and the other lady had sold her company for billions of dollars. They had everything. They had their husband, they had their kids, and still they took their life. What is the reason why creative people have that tendency to? They need always to be on edge and do something unless if they are no longer challenged. If Maslow's pyramid is no longer a reason to conquer, they take their life. Is that?
It's interesting.
Depression.
Again, you asked this question. There is always a question among psychologists, psychiatrists, clinicians, social workers: what comes first? You have some kind of different thinking, or your mind works differently. That would makes you so creative and so successful, or you're so creative, you run different directions, you do so many things, and that's what make your mind tired, or you getting anxious or so on. In this book, like you said, Brainstorm, I have the whole chapter which is dedicated to relationships between mental health and level of creativity. I talk about those beautiful minds, and we know so many great scientists and musicians and designers and writers and poets, and unfortunately many of them get anxious, and some of them take their lives, and
Let me give you an example. Since you mentioned poet, Byron and Shakespeare,
Yes.
all this Yesenin, all these guys care for love and die young, and they always need to be suffering, otherwise they would not be able to create their poetry. On the other hand, if you look at the Einstein, or you look at the Sholem Aleichem, and I could show you a couple of other writers who had a successful and happy family and marriage, and they don't need that suffering, and they still been creative. is there any correlation? Because I'm Jewish. In the Jewish tradition, I can follow. I can give you a few more examples where Jewish men have that ability to be creative and stay with the family and not be suffering and have their creativity comes from comfort of having happy family and happy life. And I see so many other creative people who really need that suffering. If they are happy, they cannot create.
Okay,
Is there
so
any
let me try
correlation
to explain. There is no one particular formula that will explain this balance or correlation. However, the most creative minds, they have to be different. They must be different in order to come up with those extraordinary ideas. Many of those people, like for example,
Staying
you said
happy or being upset, being
sensitive
challenged?
minds, very sensitive minds. They have a very high level of sensitivity, and in most cases, they have a very low level of filtering. So, in other words, their mind processes so many different external stimuli at the same time. It's not easy, and that's what makes them think different. That's what makes them so original. They can put together, recombine, change their patterns of thinking, and so on and so on and so on. So it's hard to really, give you this formula and say, do you have to suffer in order to create great poetry, or you just have this sensitive mind and you perceive everything different. You perceive everything in a different way, and that's what makes you this amazing poet that can exaggerate things, come up with these great metaphors. Because someone who exaggerates things and create this beautiful poetry can be as well exaggerating things in a daily life, and that's what makes this person suffer more than anyone else.
I see. Okay, if you as the scientist give lectures and you write books and you produce a variety of performances related to those subjects that you cover, is there a way for the audience to reach out to you? If people want to book you as a scientist or like come to give a lecture, what would be the best way for the audience to reach you?
Well, I would be happy to talk to anyone who would like to talk to me. My company is Ask Rita, and it's on the internet, as well as all my interviews, TV interviews, and some of my presentations, lectures, my art exhibitions, and so on. So I will be happy to talk to anyone who would like to learn more about creative thinking, come up with better ideas, decision making, problem solving, become more original, flexible, fluent, and so on and so on and so on.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, let me remind you that today my production, actually this week, the whole week, my father's Vet Vital company is a sponsor, so that's why you see all those jars from Vet Vital on behind us. I don't know if they are in focus, but I try to be in focus with Olga's eyes, and so that you guys can see us better. But hopefully you can also check out the Vet Vitals. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Cut.
We had just one problem. You had
button, and you will see right here, Mark.